The sexual brutality of Genghis Khan transformed an entire continent through calculated horror. In a dimly lit tent, heavy with incense and fear, a young woman's hand trembles beneath silk sheets. The most powerful man in history lies beside her, eyes closed in satisfaction. She's one of thousands, but tonight she'll be the last. Her fingers find the cold metal hidden beneath her pillow. The storm outside masks her shallow breathing. This Tangut princess, whose family burned alive 3 years ago, has waited for this moment through countless degrading nights. The blade catches candle light as she raises it. In seconds, the great conqueror who claimed 7,000 women will discover that conquest has consequences. The man who built an empire on systematic assault is about to face justice from his final victim. History will call it legend, but the screams that pierce the night are real enough. How did one man's personal pain turn into history's worst campaign of sexual violence? Why did a single kidnapping create a system that left 16 million genetic descendants across 2 continents? To understand this, we must go back 25 years to a kidnapping that changed human history. What started with one woman's capture would end with a hidden blade and an empire built on suffering. In 1184, Genghis Khan was still called Temujin, just another tribal leader trying to survive on the brutal Mongolian steppes. He had married Bort as teenagers in a political alliance that promised peace. But the Merkits had other plans. They remembered an old blood debt, a woman stolen by Temujin's father years before. The attack came at dawn. 30 riders swept through the camp while Temujin fled on horseback, leaving his new bride behind. Bort vanished into Merkit territory, where she became property of a warrior named Chilja. For 8 long months, Temujin's wife endured captivity. The historical records don't say exactly what happened, but the outcome tells the story. When Temujin finally rescued her with help from his blood brother, Bort was heavily pregnant. The child, Jochai, would carry the shame of uncertain parentage his entire life. Jochai literally means guest, a name that screamed his questionable origins to everyone who heard it. Temujin publicly claimed the boy, but doubt ate at him. In quiet moments, he studied Jochai's face, searching for Merkit features. Bort's rescue revealed something broken in Temujin. He had saved his wife's body, but not her honor. In Mongol culture, a woman taken by enemies carried permanent shame. The man who fled on horseback transformed into someone else, someone who would never run again. The Merkits paid first, not just the warriors who took Bort, but their entire tribe. Women, children, elderly, all faced complete destruction, but death wasn't enough for Temujin. He wanted them to suffer as Bort had suffered. This became his template. Sexual violence wasn't random brutality, it was calculated revenge multiplied across the world. Every conquered tribe would pay for the Merkits' crime. The psychology was clear to his generals. Temujin couldn't erase what happened to Bort, so he would inflict it on the world. He couldn't protect one woman, so he would possess thousands. The victim became the ultimate perpetrator, spreading his pain across millions of lives. What Genghis did next would echo for centuries. He turned his personal trauma into state policy. The Mongols developed a system for managing captured women that was both organized and horrifying. After each conquest, officials would evaluate captured women using a point scale. Beauty, age, virginity, noble birth, each factor had mathematical weight. A virgin princess might score 95 points, a merchant's widow perhaps 60. The evaluations happened in open courtyards where women stood naked while officials circled with their record books. Scores above 90 went directly to the Khan. The 80s became gifts for generals. 70s were distributed among officers. 60s went to common soldiers as rewards. Below 60, women faced assignment to military brothels that followed every Mongol army. The Mongols maintained detailed records of which women went where, their origins, their assignments. These documents read like inventory lists for human trafficking. Women were sorted by ethnicity, Chinese in one area, Persians in another, Russians in a third. The Mongols believed different ethnicities provided different experiences. Managing thousands of women required massive infrastructure. Special guards managed the captives. Supply chains provided food and clothing, not from kindness, but to maintain quality. Pregnant women were tracked separately, their children's parentage documented. The Mongols turned sexual slavery into a bureaucratic system. The Khan's personal collection of 7,000 women operated under strict control. They were organized by ethnicity, like human trophies displaying Mongol conquest. Walking through Genghis Khan's camp was like touring a living map of conquered peoples. Financial records show this system consumed about 15% of imperial revenues, a massive state investment in organized rape. The Mongols perfected their methods with each campaign. After defeating the Tatars in 1202, Genghis Khan ordered every Tatar male taller than a wagon wheel to be killed. But the women faced a different fate. They were distributed among Mongol troops like military supplies. This wasn't chaos, it was organized and encouraged by leadership. The goal was clear: Tatar bloodlines would continue, but only through Mongol fathers. Every Tatar woman would bear Mongol children, erasing their ethnic identity through forced pregnancy. This was genocide through biology, turning wombs into weapons of ethnic cleansing. After each city fell, the Mongols conducted what survivors called the selection. Women and girls were gathered in central squares and inspected like animals at market. The process followed strict rules. Women were stripped and examined by officials with scoring sheets. Age came first. Girls under 7 were usually killed, as were women over 40. Being selected offered no salvation. It meant entering the Mongol sexual economy as individual or collective property. The selection process was designed to break spirits. Women never knew the criteria, never understood why sisters were separated or friends faced different fates. The Mongol Empire's infrastructure included way stations that offered 3 services: fresh horses, hot food, and captive women. Every major station included comfort houses built to standard specifications. Station masters maintained inventories of available women, rotating them between locations to prevent escape attempts. The scale was enormous. Conservative estimates suggest 50,000 women trapped in this system at its peak. The Mongols documented everything with the same efficiency they used for military supplies. Daily tallies showed how many soldiers were served, which women were pregnant, who had died overnight. Modern genetic science confirms the impact. Today, 16 million men carry Genghis Khan's Y chromosome, but this wasn't accidental. It was biological warfare through systematic rape. One Mongol soldier could impregnate dozens of women yearly. Multiply this by hundreds of thousands of soldiers over decades of conquest, and the result is demographic transformation on a continental scale. DNA analysis shows that 8% of men in former Mongol territories carry identical chromosome markers from the conquest period. In some regions, the percentage reaches 30%. This represents millions of sexual assaults crystallized in living genetic code. The Mongols didn't just count and distribute women, they innovated torture methods. Each conquered culture contributed new techniques to their growing collection of horrors. They learned about psychological timing, chemical substances that increased pain, and ways to break victims mentally as well as physically. They forced family members to participate in each other's torture. They made victims choose between impossible options. They created hierarchies where victims hurt each other for slight benefits. The Mongols had mastered the architecture of hopeless decisions. As the empire peaked, the age of victims dropped continuously. Early stations used women from 15 to 35. By the empire's height, girls as young as 7 appeared in official records. The Mongols discovered that younger victims lasted longer under extreme use, a horrible economic calculation. But among all these victims was one who would change everything. Princess Gurbasu of the Tangut Kingdom was 16 when Mongol armies surrounded her city in 1227. She watched her brothers executed and her mother throw herself from a tower rather than face capture. In the selection that followed, her royal blood and beauty marked her for the Khan himself. For 3 years, Gurbasu endured life as Genghis Khan's concubine while planning revenge. She learned Mongolian, studied the camp's routines, and waited for the right moment. An older concubine secretly gave her a thin dagger, and she practiced the killing motion in darkness. The moment came during a thunderstorm. The Khan had been drinking and called for Gurbasu specifically. She hid the blade in her elaborate hairstyle and entered his tent. As he lay on silk cushions, eyes glazed with wine, she thought of her burning city and everything stolen from her. "For the Tangut," she whispered in perfect Mongolian as the blade found its mark. The man who had terrorized continents died as he lived, surrounded by evidence of his crimes. His final view included the silk partitions dividing his women by ethnicity. Gurbasu ran through the storm to a cliff and threw herself into the churning river below. Her body was found days later, but by then the damage was done. The great Khan was dead, his empire beginning to fracture. The Mongol generals created false stories about his death, illness, hunting accident, anything but the truth. They couldn't admit the world's greatest conqueror was killed by a teenage girl he had enslaved. But stories spread through the women's tents across the empire. The princess who killed the monster became a legend whispered in darkness. The Mongol sexual terror remains history's most systematic campaign of rape. It showed how personal trauma can grow into continental horror, how one man's wound can scar humanity itself. The infrastructure of sexual slavery outlasted its creator, continuing for generations with institutional momentum. Today, the behavioral echoes persist in regions once ruled by Mongols. Architecture designed for hiding women, cultures built around female protection, genetic markers mapping historical horror. One man's campaign of sexual violence literally rewrote the human genome, leaving scars that endure 8 centuries later.